And yeah, everyone, this is Thermite, and this is my reaction to, discussion of, redirect of episode 1 of The Rehearsal, a HBO comedy docudrama, I believe the term is. So, very different from my normal stuff. Don't worry, not bumping anything else, just kind of doing this as a side thing, slash, it's a live action thing, so I should be able to do a bunch of it, and, kind of just like do it whippity snippety, as opposed to manga stuff where there's a lot more mental focus. There's a lot more editing and post in order to like get rid of all the pauses, whereas in a show I can just play the whole thing. Who cares? Ah. But yeah, so that is that. Check out the reaction. The rest of this video is a discussion of that reaction. I should probably address at the very start of this discussion that I definitely spaced out at the end. The most impactful thing about the ending did not register to me because my brain was mush. That is, of course, the big, like, oh, you think that Nathan is telling Core that, he did, in fact, fuck with the sanctity of the trivia night by, feeding him all the answers secretly. And what I didn't realize, and this is actually pretty obvious, but I don't know, I was kind of checked out for a moment, that was, in fact, fake Core that he was talking to, and that whole sequence was, clearly edited as he has the actual discussion with Core, and then he actually went to that same alley beforehand and talked it over with fake Core. He did his own rehearsal of that, realized this was not going to work out, and then edited it as such that it seems like he is confessing to Core, and then he's able to take it back using the power of the rehearsal. Genius, such a cool idea, so emblematic of the entire episode and what I presume is the entire series as a whole. The that concept of the rehearsal, the ability to have a chance to practice the thing before it happens. It's so compelling. It is such an immediate, obvious the thing that everyone, even if not like this, everyone wants some variant of this. The ability to redo a bad moment that happened, or take it back, or like see what would have happened if you had chosen a different route. It is genuinely so cool. And it is like, I appreciate that, Nathan is the director, the writer, the creator, and the producer. So, like, anything I am seeing in this is something he has decided to transmit into my brain. And so I do think it's really cool that he, the premise of the series is clearly, it has a very fucked up undertone to it that he is very clearly leaning into. It is that, as I said throughout the entire video, it is that feeling of making a deal with the devil. It is that, both in the very normal, normie sense of what if you made a deal with a person, but the person was fucked up? Would that be fucked up or what? And also in the more biblical, Satan as the tempter, as the tester. The if you have this option, then what you do with that option says something about you. And the idea that there's no real darkness that comes out of Korra out of all of this. The main thing that we see out of him is that he does care about Trivia Night as much as he cares about this confession of the fact that he has he doesn't have a master's degree, but he does have a bachelor's degree. It is ultimately a very small confession, and the fact that it has weighed on him so much says more about him than it does about his friend group, honestly, because as we see from this, clearly Trisha didn't care that much about it. It's weird, but, she was nowhere near the worst case scenario, and of his entire friend group, she was the one person that he was the most worried about reacting negatively to this. There's something about that idea that he was, ultimately worrying about nothing really, but, in doing this, he did compromise one of his other big morals without even knowing about it. Nathan fed him the answers to the trivia night, so that when he was to give the confession, it wouldn't taint trivia nights. But we do realize that this would have really fucked him up because he likes Trivia Night as much as he cared about the confession. In fact, more so, because, this lie has taken 15 years, but in those 15 years, he's also been doing Trivia Night. It's minimum, not counting any time before then, and, before this current group. It's clearly, the backbone of his spirit. It's something he cares about a lot. And so having to compromise the thing that is most important to you in order to erase a lesser sin is so interesting as a concept for the episode. Rather than going with a devil thing, Core brings this up, and then Nathan clearly leans into it for the ending. Is the idea of him being Willy Wonka, where Wonka's whole deal was that he wanted to like pass on his legacy, which I highly doubt Nathan's gonna do. I highly doubt we're gonna end the series with him coming back to Core and saying, "All right, it's time for your TV show, Core for you." But I think it's a similar thing of Wonka tests all these people and he creates this weird like paradise land that is super weird and strange, and it is very attuned to him, and people who try to transgress against that get punished for it. It's a bit different in that like the Wonka thing is ultimately a very like if you are pure of heart then you can get out of this without any consequences, whereas Nathan is intentionally choosing to do things that turn out to like I mean the trivia answers thing is really the main one, but also the entire setup is so over the top. It is this truly enormous like, you're going to do all of this. We're going to violate this person's privacy. We're going to lie to them. We're going to, film all this stuff and gather all this data and information, all to make this one wish of yours come true. Or rather, to give you the possibility of granting this wish yourself. It is ultimately, like, it raises the question of, like, was this all worth it to do this thing that he could have done himself? Because it is a 50-50. Like, on one hand, yes, he literally could have done this himself. But on the other hand, even with all the shit that they did for this episode, he was still struggling. It was very possible he was not going to actually take that step forward. So I guess you could also say, had this never happened, then maybe for the rest of his life he would have always carried that small weight. But is it worth giving up that small weight, if it means putting on this much bigger weight? Ah, the directing, fantastic. I love how insanely like there's this like this sociopathy to the way Nathan operates, to this like being able to separate yourself from the situation through the power of the rehearsal, through the power of being able to have infinite chances at this moment before you take the moment itself. Like it creates this level of like depersonalization, this level of detachment that I find really, really awkward. It's not necessarily like belly laugh funny, but I definitely laughed a couple times in this episode, and I did find the entire thing just so wild and sort of, it made the chemicals course through my brain. And yeah, like just the way in which Nathan is presented is so not like diabolical, but just it's so devilly. That's really the best way I can put it. Way more than Willy Wonka-y. He just has this feeling of not being quite human, not quite getting it. This feeling of I'm gonna make this happen, and this is all in your best interest, but like it's all in the interest of solving this ultimately rather mundane small problem at the expense of everything else. Like not even thinking about how he's gonna be like how the core is going to be affected by this episode coming out. By the fact that this is an HBO show, so even if in the moment he is not told that he cheated at trivia night, when this episode comes out, should he see it, he will realize, oh, so that did in fact happen. And I mean, like all the other rehearsal moments, that doesn't, the fact that fake Core reacted like that does not mean real Core is going to be that betrayed or hurt or all that. Time heals all wounds. Maybe, by the time he watches this episode, he won't, the sting won't be as harsh. Or, I mean, it might just come down to the fact that, he didn't intentionally cheat. He did, in fact, not get that one answer about the bike because it didn't come to mind. It's possible that he knew all that information, like, the Burj Khalifa and all that. So that's very common knowledge. It's not, the information was not necessarily incepted into his brain. That all just gave him a higher chance of being able to recall those specific facts. And even so, there is that added layer of if someone incepts that information into your brain and you use it, is that the same as you cheating? Or, like, because you were doing it all based on entirely good faith, like, does that say anything in its own right? Ah. So Trisha herself, really, really funny that like we barely see her. Like we see a lot of fake Trisha. We see like how she's built up, but ultimately like we don't get an explosive outburst or anything from her. She is very understanding. She is like the actual conclusion of everything paints her in a pretty darn good light. Like there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the way in which she acted, and I mean, even if she did explode over it, like it'd be very hard to like think too negatively of her because of everything else that went down. Like the number of transgressions that have happened far outweigh, his 15-year lying spree, which again isn't even like a lying spree. It truly is just one lie that just kind of snowballed upon itself. Whereas I guess that's also, in a way, the premise of this episode. It is a, like, here is the thing we want to do, and then necessarily everything snowballs based on wanting to, like, make this confession. In order to do that, you necessarily have to do this and this and this and this, and it just kind of, compounds. Also, big props to Fake Core and Fake Trisha. They were both absolutely fantastic. I mean, Fake Core was so good, I didn't realize he wasn't real Core for a moment, so those are pretty insane props. The production of the episode, fantastic. Like, just the idea they were able to replicate the entire bar one-to-one is insane to me. Like, it's fully believable, obviously, but I mean, and especially like, on an HBO budget, I fully get it. Like, there are so many shows that will do something like that for one episode, and you don't think about it because the characters don't treat it as crazy. Whereas because we get to see it as a detached set, it feels completely and utterly insane. But I mean, even then, like, there's so much to it. Like, it's basically just the entire restaurant minus the ability to bake actual pizzas. Yeah, just absolutely blown away by how weird and awkward and strange this episode is. It truly is. It is a social experiment. I was gonna say thought experiment, but no, it is much more of your shitty thought experiment. It is the most like you would never do this, but wouldn't it be wild if you could? No, 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 we're gonna actually do it. Also, I don't think I said it, but I did look up the title of the first episode, which is Orange Juice No Pulp. I don't think that really reflects anything in the episode itself. I mean, it obviously reflects the fact that, every time Core gets drinks, it is orange juice no pulp for himself, and it is a margarita for Trisha. That's, extremely self-explanatory. I'm sure I could try and say something about the orange juice and the pulp, but that feels like reaching. This feels way more like the Taskmaster breed of, we're gonna take just, a thing that is said in the episode and turn that into the episode title. But yeah, loved it. What an absolute butt-clenching thrill ride. Oh, I hate to see it. I love to see it. Very excited for the rest of the season. I want to see more of these. Like, truly, it is. Like, I'm not excited to see Nathan invariably destroy these people's existences through, like, just the way things play out. But, it truly is a power fantasy. It is something I do want in my heart, even knowing how bad it is, even, like, saying over and over again how insane this is to do to people, to do to the world. There's still a part of me in my heart that's going like, yeah, but I would still take the offer if it was presented to me. I still want it. I still want the feeling of being able to fully explore an option before I commit to it. But yeah, truly interesting show. Cannot wait to check out episode 2. That's that. Again, if for some reason you listened to all of this and then did not watch the reaction, please watch the reaction. Let me know how you feel about it. If I missed anything else really big in the episode, do let me know. Please, please, please. Even if if it's ambiguous, feel free to say it. I will not be offended if I did catch something and you ask like, "Hey, did you catch this?" Thank you, thank you, thank you. Catch you on the flip side. Bye for now. Nya nya.